Hello, Planning a Life conference attendees. My name is Rebecca Davis. I am the Director of Transition Projects at the Federation for Children with Special Needs. Thank you for joining us at Planning a Life, Making the Most of Transition Support. I am recording this presentation. It's our Basic Rights Transition Planning, also known as a Transition in the Law presentation. We offer this presentation free and virtually throughout the year. You can usually find it on the calendar section of our website, www.fcsn.org. If you look under calendar and events, you'll see where different basic rights transition planning workshops are being held. They're virtual, but you just have to sign in. And then you can get the Zoom link and you can listen to it, as you are taking a walk or as you're making dinner. Usually they're in the evenings. And I suggest that you listen to one presenter do a basic rights transition planning, and then you might sign up and listen to another presenter because as you've probably figured out, the post-secondary transition process is just that. It's a process. You're not going to learn everything about transition planning in one workshop or in one conference or in 1 year or in one IEP meeting. Just like transition is for all of us who go through different chapters in our lives, this is a very special, a very particular transition for young people from high school into their adult lives, but there are many facets of it. And as the student evolves and changes and learns new things, different things will become important throughout time. So it might be a good idea to listen to me on this recording, and then in 6 months you sign up for another one and see what that presenter's take on transition planning is, because you might find that they have more information about something or new information that you'll find helpful. And please know you can always reach out to us at the Federation with questions, and we will do our best to answer the questions or to find the answers for you. So we'll get started. So again, my name is Rebecca Davis. This is Basic Rights Transition Planning. Let's see if I can move this forward. It was moving forward just a moment ago. There we go. And the Federation we are the Parent Training and Information Center for the state of Massachusetts. You may know that it was Massachusetts parents who got the first special education law in the country created over 50 years ago, and they didn't just stop with Massachusetts. Their law became the foundation for what is now the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is the special education law of the land, and that's what the law that we use to ask for a free and appropriate education for our young people. So we are a nonprofit. We work with state agencies, we work with DESE, we get grants, we get contracts, we also take donations, get sponsorships. We are in it for the families, we're in it for the young people, we are in it for the educators, and we just want you to know that's who we are. There are parent training and information centers now in every state and every region and every territory that is an American territory. And that's a pretty big deal. And it all started in Massachusetts. So that's score one for us. Okay, workshop objectives. So this is like the 30,000 foot vision of transition, post-secondary transition. So we're going to cover a lot. It'll be too much information, but that's okay. It's a recording and you can come back and listen to it again. I think we'll forward a PDF to you. And again, you can sign up for another basic rights transition planning workshop at any time. Just go check out our calendar and you can always ask us questions. Okay, so we're going to cover the basic, what I just mentioned a little very briefly, the basics of the laws that mandate special education, that mandate a free and appropriate public education for our students in the United States, and the importance of transition planning. We'll talk a little bit about the transition planning process. We'll touch briefly on assessments, on a student's vision, developing a plan, but also know that what you're about to experience when you do the Planning a Life on Friday and the in-person piece on Saturday is you're going to get a lot more detailed and specific information on these particular pieces. And that will be really good, I think. And then we'll talk a little bit around the age of majority, which is the age of 18. A lot changes around the age of 18. And we'll touch very briefly on potential services and supports needed after graduation if you do have a young person who will need supports as a young adult. And you'll also be hearing from Ingrid Flory from DDS. She'll also be able to tell you a little bit more about that in our Planning a Life conference on Friday and Saturday. Okay, where does it all start? So I mentioned briefly the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. That is our special education law for the nation. And everything around transition is actually mentioned in the very first sentence of the very first paragraph of IDEA. So I'm going to read it. I'm not big on reading slides, but this is important. So the purpose of IDEA is to ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them a free and appropriate public education. We call that FAPE. If you hear people saying FAPE, that's what it means, is free and appropriate public education that emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet the students, their unique needs, and to prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. So there it is. In the very first sentence, the very first paragraph, IDEA, you have what we call the big three. So everything that touches on transition planning moving forward will be about either education, employment, or independent living. And it's right there. If they ask you, if someone says, where is that in the law? You can tell them the first sentence of the first paragraph. Transition is all about education, employment, and independent living. And again, this is going to be a lot of information, and you're going to get a lot of information in the next couple of days. But if you walk away from this thinking, okay, transition, post-secondary transition, big three, education, employment, and independent living, and you know where to ask questions at the Federation or through one of our wonderful speakers that you're about to see, I will feel like we have done you a service. We will have done our job. Okay, briefly, the laws, okay? IDEA started out as, it had a different name years and years ago, but beginning in 1990, when it was reauthorized, it required transition services for all children with disabilities. So post-secondary transition was added to IDEA because the states and the federal government were seeing that kids were coming out of school, kids with disabilities were coming out of school, and they weren't ready to live as independently as possible, and they weren't ready to have a career or to have a job. So really the push for transition services began as far back in 1990. So consider we still have a long way to go, but it is mandated. And to let you know that the Massachusetts Special Education Law, which was the first special education law in the nation, Chapter 71B, in Massachusetts, we said that we wanted transition supports to start for students as early as the age of 14. Now, in IDEA, nationally, the federal law says that transition services can start at the age of 16, but that doesn't mean that states can't, go above and beyond, which is what Massachusetts did. So the federal law says transition supports start at 16. In Massachusetts, we say if we can get them, we sure would like to start transition supports at the age of 14. And in some cases, if you can get your IEP team to go along with it, we would encourage transition supports even earlier, or as early as you can get them. There's another law around transition is Chapter 688, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. The Chapter 688 or Turning 22 law is a law that alerts the adult agencies in Massachusetts that there are going to be some young adults with disabilities coming in to their community who are going to need supports, and they need to be able to budget for them. So these youth will be leaving high school and IDEA, and they will be starting to be served by the adult services community. That's really what 688 is all about, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. The Rehabilitation Act of 1973, that is around 504 plans. It's not the IEP, but the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 basically says that students or people with disabilities cannot be discriminated against because of their disability, whether they're in school, and that's a 504 plan, or in their community. And then the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2014. So as I said a few seconds ago, in IDEA in 1990, they said, oh, there's all these kids coming. They're graduating, and they were on IEPs, and they really haven't gotten ready for adult life. So we really need to put transition services in the law so that schools, do that and communities support them and they get ready for their adult lives. On top of that, there was the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2014, in which the federal government said to vocational rehabilitation agencies in every state that 15% of their budget has to go towards transition age youth in high schools. So 15% of the budget of the Massachusetts Vocational Rehabilitation, which we call a MRC, Massachusetts Rehabilitation Commission, they have to spend 15% of their budget on what we call pre-employment transition services, or PREETs, that serves kids in high schools through PREETs providers. So if that's the first time you've heard about the term PREETs, pre-employment transition services, then we have a lot to share with you over the next couple of days. Rachel Reyes from MRC will be presenting on Friday, and she's going to talk very specifically about PREETs. It's a great presentation. She makes what seems to be a really big topic. In my opinion, she makes it very approachable. So just to let you know that all of the stuff that we're advocating for is absolutely in the law. And that's where we start. That's our foundation, and that helps us move forward as we advocate for our students and for our children. Okay, excuse me a moment. It's allergy season here in Massachusetts. Excuse me. So again, who is eligible for transition services? As I said before, federally, transition starts at the age of 16. But here in Massachusetts, we start at the age of 14, and transition services go all the way up to the age of 22. So under IDEA, students up until the age of 22, their 22nd birthday, if they have an IEP, not a 504, they have to be on an IEP. But if they're that age and they have an IEP, they are eligible for transition services. And what does that mean? Well, we'll discuss that in a few minutes. Also, that's again, students of all disability types. All disability types, as long as they have an IEP. Okay, so what is transition planning? Transition planning, you're going to hear that word a lot, and it can make people feel overwhelmed. Post-secondary transition planning, what does that mean? It's just basically, how are you going to get ready for life after high school? How is your young person going to get ready for life after high school? And in this sense, the IEP team, and that includes the parent, and that definitely includes the young person to the best of your ability. They really should be coming to that IEP meeting to the best of their ability and weighing in and talking about what they would like to do, because with that you have buy-in from your youth, and that's really important. And what should you be discussing? Again, it's the big three. Academic and non-academic forces, that's education. Employment and training opportunities, that's both in school and in the community. That's your employment piece. And then independent and community living, whatever that means for your young person, to be as independent as they possibly can be, and also as connected to the community as they possibly can be. The thing that we always say is that you don't want the last day of your young person's high school experience to come and go, and then the very next day, there's just nothing going on, right? They're just sitting on the couch, and then they sit there for years and years because there haven't already been connections to the local Y or some clubs or volunteer opportunities, or having an internship, or having PREETs and getting a chance to try different job opportunities or social clubs. Just all this stuff that you start to think about as your young person, starts high school, goes through high school, and starts to think about what a meaningful, engaged life means for them, right? Because it's going to be different for every person. Okay, so in the big three, we start out with education. So academic and non-academic courses. So if you have a student who's on track to pass MCAS, fantastic. Then those first 4 years of high school, they should pursue an academic course load. And if they think that they can graduate with a regular diploma, those students should also, all students should also take great advantage of high school and electives, right? High school is a safe place to explore. I'd like to hope it is a safe place to explore and try new things. If you like photography, or if you're interested in art and or engineering, technology, you take the classes and you see what that's like. It's a safe place to try to develop your interests. A thing we'll discuss too, as an ongoing thing through this presentation, not every student will complete the district's local requirements in 4 years, and that's completely okay. Remember, IDEA says that they are entitled to a free and appropriate public education or FAPE until the age of 22. So for some students, it takes them until they're 19 or until they're 20. Some students age out at the age of 22. It's completely individualized and dependent upon your student and what your student needs. A good tip, though, is to read your local high school's handbook for information about your district's requirements for graduation. If your student is going for that diploma, you should know they have to pass MCAS. And then each district might have slightly different requirements for graduation. So don't let that surprise you. Okay, so we talked about education. The next of the big three, employment and training. This is where you can have, you can ask about who is your high school's pre-employment transition services provider, because guess what? Every high school in Massachusetts is supposed to have a pre-employment transition services provider. Rachel Reyes from MRC may say this in her presentation. And not everyone knows that. And sometimes we talk to pre-ETS providers and they say, we are just sitting here and we don't, we can't get to the families. You can absolutely refer your own student. You can call your local MRC office if you can't get any traction through the school, although I recommend going to an IEP meeting or writing an email to your IEP team. Always write it, because then you have documentation. Don't just call and assume that it's going to go anywhere. Unless it's written down, then you can't prove that you asked the question. But ask, who is the pre-ETS provider? And is my student getting pre-ETS training? And how is that going to work? And if they aren't, how are we going to get that started? Also, as you're making IEP goals, you can consider internships and volunteering. The wonderful thing is that your pre-ETS provider can help you with all of that. I can let you know that there was, what is the name of the magazine? Oh, Exceptional Parenting. Exceptional Parenting came out, or Exceptional Parent might be, came out last year, I think, and there was a study about employment opportunities for youth with disabilities in high school, and looking at youth who had already gone through post-secondary transition and how well they were employed, how successful they were in employment. And what the researchers found was that the number one indicator for success in post-high school employment for youth with disabilities was if that youth had job employment opportunities in high school. So they had to have some kind of, it didn't have to be paid, but they had to do something out in the community that was a job, that was like a job. It could have been volunteering, it could have been an internship, but it had to be the expectations of having a job and following that. And when students have those experiences, they are far more likely to be successfully employed after high school. So that's something to consider. And if you'd like to see that resource, please email me at rdavis, RDAVIS, at fcsn.org. I would be happy to send it to you. Okay. Also, employment and training for post-secondary life includes things like the soft skills. And people sometimes don't know what soft skills is, but it's really like the social skills that you get from working with people. It's knowing how to speak to people, knowing how to be polite, shaking someone's hand, unless it's COVID, and then fist bump or wave or whatever that passes for these days. How to fill out an application, uh, what is a resume, and how do I work on that? Again, your pre-ETS provider can help you with that, and that's another good reason to connect with them. On this slide, you'll see a couple of really great resources. The onetcenter.org, you'll see at the bottom of this slide, and you'll see it in the, so it's www.onetcenter.org is a great resource that gives so much information about different jobs, and it's just kind of fun to play around with it. So if that, you might want to check it out and then maybe do it with your youth, and just ask, what are some jobs that you're interested in? And let's go check it out on the ONET Center, and just kind of see what kind of skills do you have to have? Do you want to be an electrician? Okay, let's look up electrician and see what they need to do. Or do you want to be somebody who works with animals? Well, let's go see, a vet tech. Let's go see what a vet tech has to do, a veterinarian technician, and look it up. Okay, so we talked about education, employment, and the third of the big three is independent and community living. Again, as independent as your young person can be, as independent as you guys have decided on. But if I'm also the parent of a complicated, I am the parent of a complicated kid. She's 17, and she's never going to live on her own independently, but it is my goal to help her be as independent as possible in working with her activities of daily living. She goes to the Y a couple times a week, in doing the things that I want her to be able to do when I'm no longer around. So these are uncomfortable thoughts to have. They're uncomfortable conversations, but if you're the parent of a youth with special needs, I know you're thinking them. So just the things that we want to have to work on. Are there community resources that your youth can get connected to? There are a lot of wonderful resources at your local Y. We've had a lot of success with just kind of connecting with what's going on with our local Y, even if it's just going and walking on the treadmill a couple times a week. My daughter really loves it, and she loves to be surrounded by people. And that's an easy one for us to kind of go and do that. For some youth, financial literacy. Do they understand about money? Do they understand what a debit card is and how you use it? Healthcare needs. Holy cow, healthcare transition is a thing unto itself. And you will be getting a presentation from our project director from Mass Family Voices, Melanie McLaughlin. Will be completely about healthcare transition, and we can give you some resources on that. There's just so much to think about. Social life, connecting, the safety on the internet, that's its own thing. I know it's a lot, and I said this is going to be way too much information for one presentation, so you take what you can take, and it's a process. Okay, why is transition important? Not appointment. Why is transition important? It probably doesn't shock you to realize that people with disabilities have a lower employment rate than people without disabilities. You know it, I know it, so I'm just going to skip this slide. All right. One of the things we can do as parents when we are starting to look at the post-secondary transition piece is to stop, take a breath, and think, I can do this in stages. I don't have to know it all right now. And one way we can do that is by using timelines. We find that timelines are very valuable planning tools, and there are a lot of timelines out there. One I really like, and what we're going to put in a folder for you when we see you, is the transition from school to adult life. I have it right here, and we're going to put it in your folder, but it's from the ARC. And what's nice about it is that it gives you some ideas about what you could be thinking about at certain ages of your youth position and post-secondary transition. And I can read a couple for you. Like it says for ages 13, 14, and 15, to allow as much independence as possible, assign chores, strive to improve personal care with an emphasis on good grooming, money management skills, along with shopping experiences. That's a big deal, shopping for your own stuff, dealing with the cashier, getting change, appropriate behavior at home and in social situations. That's one thing. And then moving on to like age 18. Continue to consider transition assessments to clarify the student's skill development, reevaluate the need for technology to assist with communication, learning, and independence, and focus on making connections and encourage friendships in school and community organizations. Sounds familiar. So you will get this. There again, you can Google transition or post-secondary transition timelines and find a bunch of them. So it's basically your choice. I do know Autism Housing Pathways. Kathy Boyle has a great turning 18 checklist that I highly recommend as well. And if you can't find it, we can send it to you. Excuse me one second. Okay. All right. So transition planning. The way we've got the IEP written, and heads up that there's a new IEP coming just around the corner for next school year, I think. But as it has been and as it will be in the future, the goal is to try to put the student right in the heart of the IEP, because it is the student's life we're working with. It's the student's education. It's the student's prospects for employment. It's the student's opportunities to have independent and community living experiences. So we're always trying to focus on the student. So I totally get it. I'm the parent of a 17-year-old. I have been fighting on her IEP for goals about her, and I'm trying to help get her therapies and work on things for her since for as long as I can remember. But I am learning that the shift has to happen through the post-secondary transition experience, that it becomes about her strengths, about what she enjoys, about the things that she likes, and we work on that, and we work on creating meaningful connections into the community. And so, it's always been about your young person, but at this point, there's sort of a shift, and really letting their voice start to guide where the IEP is going to go, guide where their lives are headed. I mean, we're always there to guide and support, but it's ultimately their life. And the more that we can get behind that and model for them that we believe that they can do these things, the more success they're going to have. So what does that mean? Every young person is different, and I am the parent of 2 teenage girls, and I know very clearly what it's like when you say, hey, what do you think about this? Or, hey, how was your day today? Only to be greeted by monosyllabic grunts or eye rolls or nothing. That's basically what you get. But you can still, if you have a young person who does talk to you, you can start to talk about these things, as early as you possibly can. What do you want to do when you leave high school? What kind of jobs are interesting to you? What and how, if they are interesting to you, how do you think you'd get ready to do that job? Where are you thinking about living? Do you want to live with me, or do you want to live with other people your own age or your friends? Have you thought about that? And if you haven't, then let's just think about it. What do you like to do for fun? Or what don't you like to do for fun? That's another good one, especially with teenagers. If they can't tell you what they want, they can absolutely tell you what they don't want. So sometimes even that is a great starting place. It at least gives you some information, and you can engage in these conversations. Again, one conversation, you're not solving everything. You're not solving someone's life. It's not the end all be all conversation. But you start to have these conversations, and maybe as your young person sees you asking these things, they can start to think, oh yeah, I should be thinking about these things. So things like their favorite things like their likes or dislikes. One really good one is, you think about getting a job, and what is your personality like? Are you somebody who really likes to, meet a lot of people and be out in a group full of people all day and talking to people and having a lot of things going on around you? Or are you somebody who is a little bit more reserved and would prefer maybe not to have so many people working with you or around you? And then as you start to, guide things or shape things that way, then you can start to think about, well, which kind of jobs would work for that kind of experience? Again, having volunteer opportunities, having internships, hopefully in high school, will also help inform your young person's opinions about what they want to do and what they don't want to do. Okay, now transition assessments are a big deal in terms of your IEP, in terms of your IEP team, and in terms of making your post-secondary transition goals for your young person. Excuse me. So in the language under IDEA, the IEP must include appropriate, measurable post-secondary goals based upon age-appropriate transition assessments related to, here it comes, education, employment, and where appropriate, independent living skills. See, it's the big three, and it's everywhere. So the thing about transition assessments, people can get obsessive about post secondary transition assessments and having which ones are we going to fill out. You have to understand that there's no one magic test that's going to tell you what is the right answer for your young person. Assessments are as individualized as the IEP itself. It's going to depend on your youth and your youth skills and goals at that moment. Remember, the word is age appropriate. And when we were talking about even the timelines that start at age 14 or 15, timeline here, what a young person is interested in at the age of 14 is going to be different, hopefully, than what they're interested in at the age of 18 or 19, because hopefully through that process, they've had more opportunities. They've had more experiences out in the world. They've talked to people. They've tried some things. And that's always going to inform the IEP. It's always going to inform the goals. It's going to inform the skills that they need to do the things that they want to in adult life. So ideally, you would have an IEP team, your educator and your transition specialist and your pre-eds provider and your young person and you, and the therapist if you have them, but all talking about, what does your young person want to do now? What skills do they need? And what goals do we need to put in the IEP to help them get there? And then in a year, ideally, things are going to change a little bit because your information from your student is going to be different. And then you come together and you figure out what goals and what skills they need at that point. And then it's sort of like you're making some momentum. We'll talk about that a little bit more specifically in a second. Okay, and here we are. So some sample questions that drive assessment. Again, there's no one magic test. There are formal assessments about, career exploration. You can talk about that with your transition specialist, but also don't underestimate the informal assessments that you get from the people who work with your young person. If you have a student who can't sit still for 5 minutes, but who is planning on being, an engineer, or is planning on, becoming a math teacher or a doctor or whatever, or having any job really, they're going to have to sit still for more than 5 minutes. So sometimes the basic behavior that you see in the classroom will help you inform, oh, maybe that's a social emotional goal. If this young person wants to be employed, then we have to practice sitting for, 10 minutes and 15 minutes and, practice having conversations and, making change and starting conversations with people. The anecdotal information that you get, that you have from your young person, especially, but also listening to what staff and teachers see in school. That is as important assessment as a formal assessment. If your student is planning on driving a car, are they going to be able to learn to drive? That's something that you can absolutely discuss in your IEP. There are some companies in Massachusetts that help students with disabilities get ready to drive. Excuse me. So that's something that I've heard. Can they work more than 4 hours during an average workday? If they can't, and that is a goal you want to have, that's something to talk to your IEP team about and to talk to your youth about. If your young person is not going to be able to work more than 4 hours during an average workday, then they're probably going to need adult support services as a young adult. And as they age out, they're going to need a Chapter 688 referral, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. If you have a young person who's absolutely ready, got her heart set on going to college, how is she doing with that essay, that 5-paragraph essay for a college application? That's fairly standard for college. So if you have a young person who's planning on going to college, but she's not really doing 5 paragraphs, is she doing 2? Then maybe the goal is, for next semester, she starts to do 3-paragraph essays. And the goal being that you want to get to 5 by the time she's going to apply for college. Other things, a big deal, like working in a group. Our young people missed a lot for 2 years during COVID, and don't underestimate social emotional goals in terms of transition goals. If you have a young person who really wants to be out in the community working, or who really wants to go to college, there's a lot of group learning in college. There's a lot of group interaction in a community setting and in an employment setting. So if you have a young person who, has big plans, they need to be able to work with a group and work with other people. So those are goals that can be put in their IEP with very specific ideas about what do we consider success? Is success, doing a group project with 3 people and working on it throughout the semester and then presenting it at the end of the semester? Is working in a group, going on an internship and, working with 4 other people and saying hello and goodbye in a comfortable way? Again, it's going to depend on your student. Okay, so how to prepare to discuss transition at an IEP meeting. A heads up, there is a new IEP form on the horizon that we'll start presenting after we get some more information about it. It's in process. In this new IEP form, they have incorporated the current transition planning form. So on this side, it says review the transition planning form. The transition planning form is a tool that we currently use in the IEP setting. It's a tool that helps you sit down with your young person, I'm so sorry, and talk through what their vision is. Eliza's vision is to work at a veterinarian's office. She wants to learn how to take Ubers, and she wants to live with a roommate. That could be her vision. And so we would figure out, okay, what does she need to do to be able to live on her own? What does she need to do to be able to work at a vet's office? What does she need to do to be able to take an Uber? All of that vision, we can inform goals underneath that. The transition planning form, if you look it up or if you ask us, we can lead you to it, is a tool that exists now that you fill out before your IEP meeting, and you could do it with your IEP team, and it helps you work on goals. Now, for the new IEP form, they've put the transition planning form in it. So things are about to change, but it's a really good tool. Again, before an IEP meeting, one thing I would ask is, does your young person know they have an IEP? And if they don't, have you thought about why they don't know, and how are you going to broach that topic? Because an individualized education plan is a plan to help them get the support they need to learn. All of us learn differently. The way I learn is going to be different than the way our executive director learns, is different than the way my friend over here learns. Nobody learns the same, no two people learn the same way. And so if there's a stigma around an IEP, then the youth, your young people know that, or they can read that on you. And it would be something to consider, like if they don't know they're on an IEP, to figure out how you have that conversation and present it in a way that's just, this is how we help you learn the way that you learn. And that's just, something to consider. When they know they're on an IEP, the reason I say that is so we can start getting them in their own IEP meeting as early as possible. Again, some kids don't want to talk to people and don't want to go to an IEP meeting. You could still encourage them just to come and say hello to everybody and see all the people who are working to help them. There are some kids who even go so far as to make their own PowerPoint presentations, and they open their own IEP meetings and, show them what the plan is and say, how are you going to help me get there? If it's a spectrum, but the goal is for the young person to know that they have an IEP, to be able to talk about how they learn best, what their challenges are, and how they can ask for help. To know what their interests are, to think about what kind of community experiences they want or questions to ask, to give them their the autonomy to figure out how they want to participate. I had one mom call a couple of years ago, and she was, she had seen a presentation and she was trying to get her son to come to his IEP meeting. He really did not want to come, but she really wanted his team to understand how he loved to build things and how he didn't really have a chance in school to build things the way he wanted to, but that he loved doing like erector sets and Legos at home. So we talked about it, and I suggested, well, maybe you could video him while he's working on his Lego set and talk to him about, the things that he would like to do when he's out of high school. If he likes to build, what would he like to build? Or what does he think? What would be a cool job that is involves building? And so she said she'd think about it. And a couple weeks later, she called me and she said she did just that. She told him what she was doing, but in the evening when he was doing his Lego thing, she just had a conversation with him, and she recorded him while he was building his Legos. And he talked about wanting to be an engineer, and he talked about why. And while he was talking about this, he was doing these really intricate things with his Legos. And the IEP team was really blown away because they hadn't seen that level of engagement at school, and they didn't really understand how much he enjoyed that because he wasn't really forthcoming with it. But it helped put his input and his vision into his IEP meeting. So there's all kinds of ways that a student can participate. They could, you could make a video of them talking about it. If your student is nonverbal, you can make a collage about things that they love and things that they don't love, and have them participate with you in that way. Again, it's going to be individualized. That's what the I is in IEP. You can ask about transition assessments. You can ask your IEP team, this is the goal, or this is what we want. What are the assessments we need to know what the skill level is at this point, and how do we get my student there? Make a list of questions. Ooh, that's a good one. So here's the thing. So you always write emails, right? So it's so sorry, documented. But also know that, this is really busy time and everybody's short-staffed, and IEP meetings, they're a season. So you're going to have, 50, 55 minutes. So if you come in with a list of 27 questions that require a 10-minute answer, you're going to be very frustrated at the end. So you can always ask questions in emails ahead of time. But we always recommend that you come in with a list of maybe 3 questions that you absolutely want answered now, maybe 5, but 3 at least you probably get them. And then you can always call another IEP meeting. So until your questions are answered, you can engage your team, but you're going to have the best use of time if you really try to simplify what it is you want now. What are the 3 most important questions, and make sure you ask those questions at your IEP meeting. Okay, so your transition planning form, we discussed that. It's a tool. It starts out with the post-secondary vision. Vision is the word that you'll find all throughout the IEP form because it is. It's your student's idea of what they want to do in their adult life. It will just touch on the disability related needs so that you discuss with your young person, what are the challenges you have that we need to support, and put those here in the form, and they go into your IEP. And then an action plan. And the action plan is going to be how you work with the other team about what are the goals for my young person to help them get to where they need to be. I have a young lady college in 2 days in my action to work on getting her up to high by the end of this year. We'll see how far we get. She's writing 3 paragraphs, great, and she's not 22 yet. And next year we're going to start with 3 paragraphs and depend on the student. Okay, so transition in the IEP starts with the vision statement. Everything you've done in your transition planning form will go into your IEP form. PLEP A, the present level of educational performance, that's your general curriculum. That's academic accommodations and specialized instruction. You're probably very familiar with that if you have a transition age student. It's in PLEP B, the present level of educational performance, is where the other educational needs, and where, when you're talking about transition, you can get really creative because it is, again, education, employment, independent living. So the things you can discuss and thinking outside the box, outside the textbook even, is social emotional needs. That can be transition planning. Assistive technology, transition planning. Travel training. If you have a young person who's going to learn to drive, I do know some parents have had driving training put in their children's IEPs. Or if they're not going to be drivers, then travel training, especially important for students who are blind or visually impaired. O&M, orientation and mobility, and how are they going to map where they live or where they work to where they're going, from school to where they're going. How are they going to learn these important skills to help them navigate? Non-academic activities, leisure training, going to the gym and being healthy, having healthy relationships, getting to know people, going out to lunch and ordering lunch. You can have a lot of fun with the other educational needs, and sit down and talk to your IEP team, about your student leading the conversation to the best of their ability, but what a meaningful, engaged life means for them. And then the goals should be measurable. And if you absolutely can get that, I encourage you to say, who's working on this goal? Who on the IEP team is going to work on this goal? And what defines success? Are we going to check in a month and see how it's going? Or how are you going to let me know this is working? I would like to check in a month, or I would like to check in 2 months and see how it's going. Excuse me. So the IEP is a legal document. Nothing on the transition planning form is mandated, just to let you know. But again, we're about to have a new IEP and things will change. Okay, transition in the IEP, just to let you know, there will be a transfer of rights at least 1 year before the age of majority. So that's the age of 18. So your school should give you a heads up that, your student is 17. There's a transfer of rights at 18, and the state will view your young adult as a responsible adult who can sign their own IEP and be their own responsible person. I have a tickle, excuse me. At the age of 18, unless you put something in place, whether that be guardianship or supported decision making. That's something we can discuss further, or you can always call us and ask about that. If your student is going to be 18 and you are going to be filing for guardianship, you need to get that process started because, again, the state's going to recognize them as an independent adult at the age of 18. A Chapter 688 referral for students who will need adult services from any number of agencies. That can come from school about 2 years before your student plans to leave high school. So whether that's if they're leaving at 20, if they're going to age out at 22, if they're going to graduate at 18, 2 years prior, the school needs to refer you to your Chapter 688 agency. And we'll talk about that in just a second. So what is the parent's role? We've discussed this, right? You ask questions and listen. You encourage independence. You have high expectations. You talk to your young person and ask them, really listen. You know, what is it you're interested in doing? And tell me what you want to be and what you want to do. And one thing we always recommend is just to say, oh, wow, that's a really interesting idea. You know, if your young person says they want to be an astronaut, that is so great. What is it about being an astronaut that interests you? You can get a lot of information. I'm so sorry. I wish I had a cough drop. I'm so sorry to cough all the time. But your young person, there might be something about being an astronaut that you can hook onto. Maybe your young person is not going to be able to do the calculus or the physical training to become an astronaut, but maybe it's something about the rockets, or maybe it's something about, you know, working outside, or um, the machinery, or the uniforms. I don't know. You know, you listen and see where you can go from there. I can give you an example of a young man I worked with when I worked at Perkins School for the Blind. He was absolutely certain that he wanted to be a zookeeper. So he told us he was going to be a zookeeper. And so we said, well, that is great. Let's get you an internship. And we got him a summer internship at the Franklin Park Zoo. And so to get ready for it, he had to learn a lot of facts about tigers, which he was very excited about. So he spent a long time looking up information about tigers because his role was going to be tiger information guy. I can't remember what the name was, but he was going to stand outside the tiger enclosure and give people information about these two rare tigers that they had at the Franklin Park Zoo. So in the spring, he did a lot of planning and he researched a lot, talked to the zoo folks, so ready to go. And then when summer came, you know, I would put him in the van, and twice a week we would go to the Franklin Park Zoo, and he would stand outside the enclosure and he would talk to people about these incredible tigers, and that's what we did for several weeks. So after about a couple weeks, he started to think about this a little bit, and when I would say, are you ready to go to the zoo, he would seem less than as excited as he was to begin with. And I said, well, hey, you know, we've got to finish this, but what's going on about the zoo? And it come to find out, he figured out that when you are a zookeeper, you have to work outside. And what he discovered was that he wasn't crazy about working outside because it's too hot. And that really wasn't his thing. He also discovered from his internship at the zoo that animals sometimes have a certain odor. And he did not like that odor one bit. So the time that he spent at the zoo smelling that odor made him rethink the fact that he wanted to be a zookeeper. So after his internship, because we finished it, right, and we had a good relationship with the Franklin Park Zoo people, he was able to take that information that he got for himself by doing something and reassessed his desire to be a zookeeper. Now he had new information. Zookeepers work outside. He didn't want to work outside. Animals sometimes smell. He did not like strong smells. So he had to rethink how he was going to work with animals, but avoid those other pieces that he didn't like. And that informed his goal. I'm not sure what he ended up doing, but he decided he no longer wanted to be a zookeeper, and that's where we go from there, right? That's the whole point about having volunteer jobs, having internships. I bet for everyone watching me right now, I'm fairly certain that most of you are not in the same job you had when you were 15 or 16. I was a pool attendant, and I am not a pool attendant anymore, and I'm very grateful for that because it got kind of gross when you're 15, but that's the job I had. So that's it. You know, we get opportunities, we try them. They don't work, but then it teaches us what we want and what we don't want, and we just keep doing that. So teaching your young person and modeling for them that you try things and they don't always work, but it gives you information and you keep going. That can be one of the most important things that you offer them in your role in transition planning. I can tell you I was at a meeting with MRC. We were talking about a program, and they asked, that's Mass Rehabilitation Commission, that's the vocational rehab, and they asked the question of who sitting in that room got their first job with help from somebody in their family. And everybody in the room raised their hand. So something to think about is your role in how do you connect your young person to the community. You know, do you have a friend or someone in your family who runs a shop where your young person could help work? Does somebody volunteer somewhere and they could take your young person with them? You know, where are your community connections that you can offer to your young person and encourage them to get out into the world? You can always talk about different jobs. Like if you're at a restaurant, you can look at the chef. If you see them cooking in the kitchen, say, wow, I wonder what you have to do to be a chef. And I know you like to cook. What do you think they have to do? And just have those conversations, just to get the ball rolling and to have them think about things. Also, in this day and age, it's always important with every kid, but you practice soft skills, right? Looking people in the eye when you can. For some kids who are visually impaired and who have autism, that's not the thing. But just politeness, right? And asking questions and having conversations. How does that work? And so the student's role in transition planning. We've discussed this, but to participate where they can, develop their own vision statement, if they can, to share it at the IEP meeting, whether that is something they say or present or something they write and have someone else read, whether it's a collage, something that they have done that speaks for their voice in their IEP plan. Again, the more buy-in you can get from your student, the more motivated they're going to be to go to school, the more motivated that they will be to understand that it's their life that you're working on. They can discuss taking courses to prepare for post-secondary goals. And that's, again, something that your pre-ETS provider can help you with, or your transition specialist. If there are training programs that happen after high school, they can help you explore that. Or if they want to spend some time on a college campus, there's just, especially in Massachusetts, there are so many options. And you will hear about a lot of those in Planning a Life. Self-determination and self-advocacy. Excuse me. One thing we talk all the time is letting our young people know that they have opinions and that they have the right to their opinions. They have a right to their likes and their dislikes. As a parent, maybe you don't always get to have pizza for dinner, and I'm going to have to say no, but I respect your ability to have that desire to have it. And I want you to tell me, and I want to take it seriously. We want our young people to expect to be listened to know that if they make a choice, if they say yes about something, or if they say no about something, that the people in their lives will listen to them and that they should expect that. And that's really important for me too, because I have a young lady who's nonverbal, and communication is key right now. It's what we're working on. And self-advocacy is telling people, right? Self-determination is having those opinions and those beliefs, and they're yours. Self-advocacy is telling people about them, and that can be taught and practiced in school, at home, and in the community. So all students, everybody needs opportunities to problem solve, to fail, to get up and fail. The ability to fail and get back up is, I think, one of the most important things we can teach any kid. I feel that way about both of my daughters. And to advocate for themselves. If you need help, you can ask. If someone says no, then someone says no. You ask somebody else. That's, again, really crucial skills that we can teach every kid. There's a tremendous resource here that we list on the slide. There is an organization called Mass Advocates Standing Strong, and I highly recommend you checking them out. They're self-advocates. Also, Centers for Independent Living are usually run mostly by adults with disabilities. I think I'm not sure what the percentage is, but I think the majority of the percentage of staff have to be individuals with disabilities, and they're really big in advocacy. Also the ARC of Massachusetts. So as much as you can help your young person get used to expressing themselves and talking about how they feel and saying yes to things and saying no to things and feeling respected, that will help them live a meaningful, independent as possible adult life, hopefully a safe life, as safe as possible. And we're all doing the best that we can. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about healthcare. So there is an assessment on www.gottransition.org. There's a couple of great quizzes there. So if you think you are all over this transition thing, I would challenge you to take the gottransition.org quiz and see how you do. Sometimes parents fill it out and go, huh, I have some work to do. I'm going to let Melanie talk more about this, but the organizational skills that they're going to need for handling their medical needs. And the whole idea is that nothing in your life works if your healthcare doesn't work. If you don't know how to get your meds, if you don't know how to make a doctor's appointment, none of this other stuff in transition is going to work. So I look forward to hearing what Melanie has to say on Friday. The anticipated graduation date, we talked about that again. Don't let that surprise your young person or you. I highly encourage that you have these conversations. We had a conversation with a group from Easter Seals of young adults, and I asked them, what if there was one thing you could tell people about post-secondary transition, adults or parents, what would you tell them that you wish you had known? And this one young man said immediately, he said, I wish I had known about graduation. He said, I went to school with all my friends, and then they all graduated and they went to college. And then I went back to my high school the next year. And nobody had told me that I wasn't going on to something else. And this was like 4 years later, and that really stayed with him, that nobody had discussed that he could go through, they call it the social graduation. And all students with disabilities have the legal right to walk in graduation with their friends and their peers. But if they're going back into high school or doing a transition program, so they're still under IDEA, it's good for them to know that and to understand what that means, and maybe to go to the program before the end of the year so that they're not just like stunned that what just happened. Everybody I know just left for college and I'm going back to the same campus. So yeah, always ask your IEP team what they expect the anticipated graduation date is and see if that aligns with you, and then make sure your student knows about it. So for the age of majority, I've already mentioned that. There's the age of 18 checklist. There's a list for it here. At the age of 18, a student is presumed to have the capacity to make their own legal, financial, and healthcare decisions, including signing their own IPs and inviting you to your own IP. They might not invite you. They might invite their friend Sean to come to the IEP, and you're not invited anymore. So these are some things to be aware of. And if you have questions about how you're going to handle that, you start talking to the IEP team. You reach out to us at the Federation and talk to your young person so that there are no surprises. So the Chapter 688 referral. This is called the Massachusetts Turning 22 Law. And so for young people who age out of high school at the age of 22, they're not going to be able to work more than 20 hours a week, which is 4 hours a day without supports. They're going to be referred to an adult human services agency. And that could be any one of a number of different agencies, whether it be MRC, whether it be the Department of Mental Health, whether it be the Department of Developmental Services, or DDS. And it's a good idea to give that agency at least 2 years to plan, because they are going to be budgeting. So a thing to realize is that transition services under IDEA is an entitlement. It's an entitlement under law. Once your student ages out, then they're eligible for services, but that doesn't mean that those services are available. There might be a wait list. Things might have closed down, and we are seeing a real problem, a real challenge post-COVID, that a lot of day programming stopped being day programming. And even if they are picked back up, that people who had like a placement for 5 days a week are now only getting 3 days a week because there's a shortage of staff. So there's a lot of challenges around, especially the folks who are going to go to day programs. And so it's not a certainty that your young person is going to get a placement where they want and where you want after they leave high school. So that's why it's a good idea to get this referral process started. Now, you can self-refer if you need to, but your school should be able to do that for you. You should ask them which agency, and you guys should just decide and try to be in alignment on which agency you think would the central agency. Agencies can work together. It doesn't have to be just one agency. Like DDS could work with the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind, or the Department of Deaf and Hard of Hearing can work with the Department of Mental Health. They can work across topics, but you do need to have one lead agency. So it's a good idea to know who your youth is going to be referred to. Now, a referral is not doing the application. You still have to follow up and fill out the application yourself. Then you mail it in. Then you take a picture of it when you mail it so you can say which day you mailed it in on. Then you follow up like 3 months later or a month later, and you call someone and say, hey, did you receive this? And then you get the name of the person you talked to. I'm speaking from experience here. So that you have a documented trail that you applied, that you mailed it in, that you spoke to someone who said that they got it, and so you know it's in the system. Because the last person you want to be is the person who sent it in and then didn't follow up. And then 2 years later, when your young person is ready to receive some adult services, the agency goes, well, I've never heard of this young person. I don't think you did send in the application. You don't want to be that person. So always, have a paper trail. If you call somebody, just make sure you get their name and write down, what day and what time, so that nobody can disagree with you that this is something that you did. There is no entitlement to adult services. Chapter 688 is not a continuation of special education. Special education stops when a young person leaves high school and will stop at the age of 22. So that's something to be considered as you move forward. Everything I just said is right here. These are the adult and community agencies, the state agencies that they can be referred to: DDS, MRC, the Department of Mental Health, the Massachusetts Commission for the Blind. Usually, if you have a young person who has a sensory loss, like blindness or deafness, that agency will take the lead and work with the other agencies. Community agencies to reach out for, because they offer tremendous community resources. The ARC, Easter Seals does fantastic stuff around youth leadership, and they have a great college navigation program. And Partners for Youth with Disability also does great youth engagement work. And also they're a PREATS provider. Okay, supported decision-making and guardianship. This is its own presentation. It's its own conference. So that's something that we can discuss, or we can provide you some resources. Just know that you spend all this time advocating for your young person to be in the least restrictive environment. And when it comes to the age of 18 and the age of majority, that guardianship is the most restrictive environment, or it's not something that you can really take back. So there are options of supports from the least to the most restrictive. So you can talk to your young person, and you can talk about having joint bank accounts. They could talk about a healthcare proxy. If you want to set up a trust or be the representative payee, you can help your young person work on being as independent as possible, so that maybe you don't have to have a guardianship, but it might take more time than another kid. And again, you know your child better than anyone, but it's just something to consider. There are a couple of really great resources. There's the Center for Youth Choice, Youth Voice, that if you, I need to put that on the list of resources we're going to put in your folder. And there's a couple of more that we've listed here on the slide. But I would encourage you just to learn about your options. There's a really big push in other states and nationally about supported decision-making and what that means. And we all use, supported decision-making. every time we make a decision. So I could talk more, but I'm just going to cough more. So I'm going to try to get through this. Yay. So there's no one right way, right? It's a process. It's a lot of information. We want to teach them to fail. We want them to have as many opportunities as possible before the age of 22 as they're getting their entitled, free, and appropriate public education. As many opportunities in education, employment, and independent living. And this is a great start for you. But you're going to get a lot of information about PAL, and we're going to be able to provide you a lot of resources, and we will help guide you when you have questions. This is just the beginning of the conversation. If you do have a dispute, if you find that you're having an issue, this is going to be in your PDF. We can talk about this process. You're going to have it in your PDF, but I'm not going to discuss it right now. If you want to learn more about what we're doing in the transition projects, I'm so sorry. When you registered, you probably asked, or I asked you if you wanted to be part of our transition listserv. If you said yes, I probably already added you to it. But it's free. It's just when we find out about new programs or new webinars, mostly things that are free, we just send them out. We have about 800 people right now on our listserv. It gives you an idea about just some things you can check out. There's a great Facebook page, the Massachusetts Transition to Adulthood Facebook page. It is moderated by transition professionals at UMass Boston. And it's a very welcoming, real-time community of parents who are either in the same boat as you or who might be like a couple of steps ahead, where you can ask opinions, you can ask for referrals, or you can just sort of bounce ideas off of people. Highly recommend that. And then you can always check out what we offer at our website at www.fcsn.org. Okay, so we're going to have surveys, right? So we do get grants federally and state grants. And so as we do our workshops, we're going to provide you with surveys. And it would be so great if you would fill them out, because that helps us tell our grantors and our funders that we actually are doing the work. And it also helps us know what you want to know so that we can create content, or which workshop presenters need to have a lozenge, perhaps. So when you do the workshop survey about this, you could say, boy, I wish Rebecca had cough drops. And in the future, I will. 2 random survey participants will receive a $25 gift card. They will. We have a lot of information at the Federation, just to let you know. We have an outreach team that is spectacular. They speak Spanish, Portuguese, Chinese, and Haitian Creole. We also have a young lady who speaks Vietnamese. And I'm looking into working with someone who speaks Khmer, Cambodian. So we are always trying to reach out to as many people as we possibly can in the language that they know best. We have an information center that you can call, or you can fill out the intake form online to ask your questions, and an information specialist will do our best to get back to you as quickly as possible. We offer workshops. Remember, you're going to sign up for another basic rights transition planning. You're going to go to the calendar and sign up on somebody else's thing. I bet they won't cough for the entire 2 hours. You're going to love it. Also, if you want to learn more about special education, we offer the Parent Consultant Training Institute. That is an intensive training for parents and professionals about special education, about such a wide variety of special education. Excuse me. So if you're really interested in this advocacy thing and you want to learn more about it, I highly recommend you check out the Parent Consultant Training Institute. Okay, I'm almost there. We have our annual conference, okay? So your guys are coming to the Planning a Life, which is our annual transition conferences, and there are many conferences, but the big one, the mother of all conferences annually for the Federation, is the Visions of Community Conference. And on March 9th, 2024 will be our annual Visions of Community Conference. So check it out. There's information about it here. Check us out on social media. We now have the TikTok. I don't do them because I'm 110 years old, but we have youth consultants who are doing TikToks. We're on Facebook. We do Instagram. So check out our social media for information about upcoming events. Thank you. We got through it. This is so great. So hopefully I'm going to see you guys on Saturday, and I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to have a really fun day. You guys are going to get to talk to Emily Berheide about, she's a talent specialist, or yeah, she's a transition specialist, but she does this talent discovery presentation that I really love. And Ingrid Flory is going to talk a little bit about charting a life course, which I highly recommend. And then the youth, we're going to do some fun stuff, talking about things that we want and things that we don't want in our life. And Shine, a dance group from Berkshire Hills Music Academy. And I'm really intrigued about what they're going to do. So that's it. We got through it. You're awesome. Thank you for registering. Thank you for listening to this. Remember, it's a process. One step at a time. You can always ask questions. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and we will see you at Planning a Life. Thank you.